In League of Legends, few things unite the player base quite like complaining about champion design. From 200 years of experience to mobility creep, players love to hate the newest additions to the roster. Yet amidst this sea of criticism stands a champion who somehow escapes the community's wrath: Jhin. Released in 2016, this psychopathic artist with a gun has maintained something almost impossible: near universal respect from a notoriously critical player base. While champions released before and after him have been condemned as overloaded, frustrating, or simply bad design, Jhin has kept his hands clean. But in a game where even the most popular champions have vocal detractors, how has Jhin managed to represent what players consider League at its best? Sometimes the most engaging gameplay doesn't come from giving a champion every tool possible, but from imposing meaningful limitations that create depth rather than restricting it. To dig in, we need to rewind to late 2015. The marksman role was in a strange place. Despite being essential to most team compositions, it had the smallest champion pool in the game. Worse yet, these champions all felt remarkably similar. Tristana, Sivir, Jinx, Caitlyn, they all built the same items, fulfilled the same role, and played fundamentally the same way: attack as fast as possible. This homogeneity problem became so apparent that Riot launched the Marksman update, aiming to differentiate ADCs from one another. Their first attempts were problematic. They tried forcing Mordekaiser into the bot lane, which became a balanced nightmare. They moved Graves from bot to jungle, and they created Kindred as a jungle marksman. None of these solutions addressed the core issue facing traditional bot lane ADCs. What the role needed wasn't just champions who could go elsewhere on the map, it needed a fresh perspective on what a marksman could be. While Riot was figuring out these problems, they were also working on something special behind the scenes. In late 2015, players noticed something strange happening on the League website. The champion pages for Zed, Sona, V, and Garen had been altered, showing these champions artistically murdered, posed like crime scenes with bullet wounds and flower arrangements. Absolutely no explanation was given, no context provided, just these haunting images that had the community buzzing with theories. This wasn't the typical champion teaser with flashy animations or cinematic trailers. It was mysterious, unsettling, and utterly captivating. Days later, more teasers followed, a short video and whispers of a new champion. Players speculated wildly. Was this a new skin line, a rework of an existing champion, even a lore event? This elaborate teaser campaign remains one of the most memorable champion introduction in League history because it was more than marketing. It was storytelling that perfectly embodied the character being introduced. Methodical, theatrical, and designed to create anticipation before the big reveal. When Jhin was finally unveiled with his haunting login screen and theme music, the pieces fell into place. The marketing team had essentially role-played as Jhin himself, treating the community as an audience to his artistic murders. It was chilling. It was exciting, but most importantly, it was introduced as a new level of immersion that felt faithful to the champion. When players finally got their hands on Jhin, they discovered something remarkable: a marksman who defied the core mechanics of the role itself. While every other ADC focused on maximizing attack speed, Jhin couldn't increase his attack speed at all. He had exactly 4 shots before needing to reload, a fixed attack rate that could not be improved. On paper, this should have been a massive disadvantage. In a role defined by constant damage output, being forced to pause every 4 shots seemed like a severe limitation. But here's where the genius of Jhin's design became apparent. This constraint didn't make him weaker, it made him more theatrical. Because Jhin couldn't improve his attack speed, he gained massive amounts of attack damage instead. His 4th shot always critically struck and dealt bonus damage based on missing health, creating a rhythmic pattern of setup and execution. Suddenly, ADC players weren't mindlessly right-clicking but were thinking about when to use each shot of their precious 4 shots. This philosophy of beautiful constraints extends throughout his entire kit. His W can root enemies but requires allies to damage them first. His E creates zones of control but take time to arm. His ultimate fires exactly 4 shots in a narrow cone, incredibly powerful but limited in application. Every ability in Jin's kit has clear constraints that create distinctive gameplay rather than restricting it. They give both Jin and his opponents clear windows of power and vulnerability, making encounters feel fair and strategic rather than frustrating. This brings us to why Jin has avoided the community's ire for over 7 years. He feels fair to play against. When you die to Jin, you rarely feel cheated. His damage patterns are visible and predictable. His 4th shot has clear visual and audio cues. His reload timer creates windows where skilled players can punish him. Unlike champions that frustrate players with invisible power, excessive mobility, or seemingly unavoidable damage, Jin's strengths and weaknesses are transparent. Players understand exactly what he can and cannot do at any given moment. Compare this to champions that regularly top the community's most hated lists. Yasuo with his unlimited dashes, Zoe with her one-shot potential from Fog of War, Yuumi with her untargetability. These champions all share a common element. They break fundamental rules of the game in ways that feel unfair to opponents. Jin breaks rules too. He ignores attack speed scaling entirely, but he does so with clear compensating weaknesses. He has no dashes or blinks. His crowd control is conditional. His damage, while high, comes in predictable bursts. Jin's mechanical design would be impressive enough on its own, but what elevates him to true excellence is how perfectly these mechanics integrate with his character. Every aspect of Jin's kit reinforces his identity as a meticulous, theatrical killer obsessed with creating art through death. His passive reflects his methodical nature, each shot carefully placed, building to a dramatic 4th shot finale. His ultimate, Curtain Call, literally frames his targets like a stage performance before executing them. Even his obsession with the number 4 permeates every aspect of his kit. 4 shots in his gun, 4 bounces on his dancing grenade, 4 shots in his ultimate. In Chinese, the word for 4 sounds similar to death. In Japanese, 4 and death are pronounced identically. This is why the number 4 is considered unlucky in both cultures. Buildings often skip the 4th floor, hospitals avoid room numbers with 4, etc. This thematic consistency is something many champions lack. How many times have players questioned why a certain ability is part of a champion's kit, or why a champion behaves in ways that don't match their lore? With Jin, there's never a disconnect. The fantasy of playing as an artistic killer and the actual gameplay experience align perfectly. Perhaps most impressive about Jin's design is how well it has aged. Since his release in 2016, League has undergone massive changes, item overhauls, rune reworks, meta shifts, yet Jin has remained viable throughout it all without requiring fundamental changes to his kit. He's never been so dominant that he required gutting, nor so weak that he needed a rework. When lethality items were strong, Jin adapted with burst builds. When crit items were reworked, he found new build paths. When mobility became non-negotiable, his passive movement speed on crits kept him relevant. Even in professional play, Jin has maintained a healthy presence without warping the game around him. He appears when the meta suits him and fades when it doesn't, but he's never completely disappeared nor become mandatory. Jin's success didn't just create a beloved champion, it changed how Riot approached marksman design forever. After proving that players would embrace a marksman with unique mechanics and clear limitations, the floodgates opened for more experimental designs. Look at the marksman released after Jin. Xayah with her Feather Recall mechanics, Kai'Sa with her evolution system, Senna with her soul collection, Aphelios with his weapon swapping, and Samira with her style meter. Each of these champions represents a departure from the traditional right-click marksman model that dominated pre-2016. While not all of these experiments were successful, for example, Aphelios required multiple nerfs and UI changes to become reasonably balanced, they all built on the foundation Jin established. Recent years have seen champions released with kits so overloaded that they required multiple paragraphs to explain. Consider Akshan, whose passive alone contains multiple effects, or Nyla, who shares experience, has built-in lifesteal that converts to healing for allies and can make allies untargetable. These champions try to do everything at once, resulting in kits that feel unfocused and frustrating to play against. Jhin, by contrast, does one thing and does it brilliantly. Every ability supports this core identity without adding unnecessary complexity. There's no extraneous passive that doesn't fit his theme, no random mechanic tacked on to cover a weakness. His kit is elegant in its focus. Everyone understands what Jhin wants to do and how he plans to do it. The tension comes not from deciphering complex interactions, but from the execution and counterplay around his known capabilities. As League enters its second decade, Jhin remains a blueprint for what champion design could and should aspire to. Ultimately, what makes Jhin represent League at its best is that he embodies the game's core promise, strategic depth that rewards both mechanical skill and thoughtful decision-making. He proves that limitations, when thoughtfully implemented, don't restrict creativity but instead inspire it. So the next time you hear the haunting melody of Jhin's theme, or the dramatic declaration of "4" as he lands his final shot, remember that you're witnessing a masterclass in design that represents League of Legends at its absolute best. If you enjoyed this analysis of Jhin and League champion design, consider subscribing and ringing that bell icon to be one of the first to catch our future champion breakdowns and design discussions. Until then, remember, in League, as in life, sometimes the most powerful performances come from embracing your limitations rather than denying them. We'll see you in the next video.